You're tuned into the Writing Community Chat Show, the live streaming YouTube podcast that brings you the stories of authors, screenwriters, and more. Indie or established, this show's for the community, and we invite you to be a part of it. Head to the writingcommunitychatshow.com for more info. The WCCS. Together as one, we get it done.
Hello, and welcome to the Writing Community Chat Show. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Writing Community Chat Show. We are very grateful to be here as always, and we hope you've had a fantastic week. Welcome to the show. If you're new here, my name is Chris. That is also Chris, just to make things a little bit more confusing. But we talk all about writing, about books, and there's lots of advice that comes from these shows as well. So we're here on a journey to support you and to help you develop your craft as well as ours. We've interviewed lots of people, and tonight we've got a great guest for you as well. Chris, how are you doing?
Yeah, I'm good, Chris. It's been a good week. Entertainment-wise, we were talking just before the show. I read Project Hail Mary in about 5 hours last weekend, so that's quite nice. And I saw a great film this week. Good luck, have fun, don't die. If you've not seen it, you need to go and see that because it was a good fun.
Yeah, I haven't seen much about that, so that's going to pique my interest. So, Project Hail Mary, thoughts? As good as expected?
Yeah, I loved it. It was a great book. Andy Weir, obviously The Martian. But yeah, I just thought, you know what, with the film coming out, it looked quite good, so I want to read the book first. So yes, I started, and this is when you know you've got a good book, because I didn't plan on reading the whole thing. But yeah, 5 hours later it was done, and I was like, oh, guess I finished that then.
It's pretty impressive to read a book in 5 hours. It is for me anyway. So was that like a one-sitting job?
Yeah, pretty much. I went to bed with the sort of idea of going to sleep, and then 5 hours later I was like, yeah, it's finished. But I needed to know how it ended. So kept going.
Well, yeah, sounds fantastic. And obviously The Martian was just incredibly, when something is based on science fiction, especially if it isn't as accurate as, the slightest if the slightest thing's out of detail or accuracy wise is not quite right, then people are going to jump on this back and give him criticism for it. But yeah, by all accounts, that was spot on and thoroughly enjoyed it myself. So, he's got a touch for making it right. Yeah,
one of the biggest compliments I can give him is, despite the sort of strangeness of the story, none of it seems like it's unbelievable. Like, he has a really good knack of just making everything make sense. And obviously I'm not going to give any spoilers away for people, but there's some stuff in here that could easily be very unbelievable if not done right. And he does it right, and you believe the whole thing, and you're like, wow, that's great.
Yeah. And in terms of writing, I know I've got a project to do by July, but that hasn't gone very far at the minute. Things are very busy. Have you been writing this week, Chris?
Nope. I'm like the biggest hypocrite ever, because obviously we talk about writing all the time and we interview people about writing. But I must be at least a month now.
Yeah.
I'm saying, if you're not writing, then you should be reading, and I'm doing that. So yes. I'm seeing that as the sort of, staying in the creative space. But yeah, maybe the juices will start to flow again at some point.
Well, I picked up a book that I was given on the very first Harrogate trip we went to by Danny Marshall, which was Anthrax Island. And I've been diving into that through the week whilst I'm on my little breaks in work. So that's been nice. Getting to sit in the sun and read a book. That's a thing we haven't seen or done for a while. So that's lovely. So I have been reading as well. So that's a good thing. Yes, but we need to get the ball rolling. And tonight's guest has got some great advice on that. So without us rambling too long, I hope you guys in the chat are okay. Please get involved in the comments. Hit the like button if you haven't done that. And obviously, please subscribe if you're new to the channel. So tonight's guest spent over a decade in the classroom as a public school English teacher before turning her legacy quest of writing a novel into a thriving full-time indie career. She is the creator of the tech-driven Taylor Industries romantic suspense series, and the rugged Vermont set-on-trail love adventures. Known for crafting fierce heroines and the protective men who love them, she doesn't just write great stories, she also teaches other writers how to do the same. As the founder of All Writes Well, as you might have seen as a podcast channel, a YouTube channel as well, and the author of The Truly Successful Author, she is a master of the 4-book-per-year system. Hopefully will give us some insight how to write more, proving that you can build a profitable catalogue without hitting burnout. We're going to talk to her about her writing journey, her books, and as always, we are unearthing writing tips and advice throughout. So please give a nice warm welcome to the show, Maria Secoy. Hello, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me on.
You are very welcome. And again, thank you for joining this. It's going to be great. As I mentioned, just digging into different aspects of your writing and your career and, the romance side of things, but also the writing advice and the coaching. That's what we love as well. So yeah, really excited to chat to you, and I hope your week's been productive and good too.
It has. I like many people celebrate, and I'm in the US. So for me, it's the end of the workday on Friday. So I'm like, we'll finish this, and then I'm ready to run around the house screaming freedom for the weekend. So
yes, absolutely. We do have a few that drop in as the show progresses, that a few of our American followers, and hopefully they will do the same. And they often are in that same sort of mindset as well. So yeah, it's great. We finished work a bit earlier today, so it's nice, and we've settled in, and it's a bit evening time for us. But yeah, whereabouts in America are you joining us from?
So I am actually deep in the Appalachian Mountains, and I always love to ask people, how far do you travel to the grocery store? When you need to pick up milk, how far do you go?
Minutes?
Yeah, a couple of minutes, yeah.
45 minutes in a vehicle.
Ooh. Wow.
Yes, I am approximately 35 miles from the nearest grocery store. So I am deep in the mountains. We did not have high-speed internet until 2020.
Amazing.
So every time somebody's like, why are you so behind on podcasts? I'm always like, I got to catch up on a lot of years here.
Yeah. So what's the score in your shopping then? I know this is not writing related, but I don't care. So do you go and just get loads just in case you can't make it back for a while?
Yes and no. I will tell you, it's actually, there's a lot. It is amazing how much life overlaps, because me learning how to hit deadlines with my writing is ultimately what allowed me not to starve to death when I first moved out here, because there were very much so days where I was like, wait, what am I supposed to do for food? I don't have an hour and a half to go run into town. So yeah, I plan it all in advance. It used to be a 3-hour evolution. I would take 3 hours every Saturday to go grocery shopping. Now I am able to just go pick it up. So it's an hour and a half. I drive there, I pick it up, I drive back. They even load it in my trunk for me, and life is wonderful.
Yeah, well, that's pretty impressive. And I know, it's a busy time to go out and shop for 3 hours. But yeah. So one question that I always ask, and this is going to be very different, which is what's the writing scene like where you live, and do you connect with readers and authors locally? And I'm guessing the answer to yours is going to be no.
That is incorrect. I know, it's shocking. Okay, so here's the thing. On the one hand, yes, you're absolutely right. Community would be a very loose term for the numbers of readers and writers around here. But that's because there's less than 5,000 people in the entire county. So there just aren't that many people to start with. That said, it's amazing when you end up very rural in a very beautiful area. I mean, there's a reason people come leaf peeping up and down the Appalachian Mountains. It's gorgeous. It inspires the creative arts. And so you would be shocked, not only by how many writers are around here, but by how much cultural infrastructure there is built into the community. So we have Garth Newell nearby, where they do live music performances and book readings, and it's fantastic, and it becomes a form of tourism here. That said, I am so incredibly grateful for the internet, because my community would be very limited if I were limited to in person. So being able to connect with people online means that I've been able to build an international community of writers.
Yeah, it's really interesting. So do you interact with a lot of the people that come, it must be a lot of people walking and hiking through the areas. Are you the type of person to be able to go and connect with those people and find out about their stories?
Yes. And I usually do so by hiking the Appalachian Trail, because in all reality, I live on a ton of acreage on the side of a mountain. Like, I will go weeks seeing no one but my immediate family, like in person, face to face. When I want that social connection, I always call it collecting stories. Anytime I'm feeling stuck on my book, or like Chris, you mentioned that you haven't been writing as much recently. Anytime I get in one of those ruts, I grab my backpack and I go on a weekend backpacking trip on the Appalachian Trail, which is just a few miles from my house. And the Appalachian Trail is a 2,000 plus mile long footpath that's literally my dad. I showed it to my dad and he was like, "That's not a hiking trail, that's a goat path." And I was like, "Okay, it'll be all right." But it's heavily populated. People are always hiking it. And so I know if I go out to the Appalachian Trail, I'm going to run into people, and 100% guaranteed they will have the craziest stories I never could have imagined on my own, because normal, sane humans don't hike 2,000 miles through the woods with nothing but a backpack.
Yeah. Well, there's two benefits for writers there, for people who don't know. And one is the fact that you're meeting those people, and it's not a bad thing to do. As much as you want to hide behind the keyboard and the screen, that gives you great inspiration for your characters, but also those walks we've talked about on the show before, going out and clearing your mind, forgetting about the story. Suddenly you'll find it popping back up in your head and you're processing it in a different way. So I think getting out, especially now the weather's changing, if you're struggling like I am, I need to get out on some walks. I know that works. So that's my inspiration. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
So
no, I was going to say, Maria, obviously it's really interesting that you've got this community and you've got that option. But when did writing become something in your life? That's a question that we always sort of ask. Do you know the moment?
I do. Brace yourselves. I was 18 and just found out that my best friend was pregnant with the baby of the guy I was in love with.
Ooh.
Yeah, it was this whole like sordid thing. And there was no way at 18, I was like, I don't know what to do with this. And obviously my best friend was involved, so I couldn't talk to her about it. So I started writing, and it was really bad. I mean, like, we are talking hardcore, teen, angsty, whiny, awful, like heart-wrenchingly terrible prose. But it did something for the insides of me. It helped me process things. And then when I got to college, I actually started at university as a biology major because I was planning to go into medicine. I started out pre-med, and that was really hard. And I don't like to do hard things. I tend to be a little bit lazy. In fact, I always tell people I like to hike because all I have to do is like go outside. It doesn't require a ton. And then the only way home is to walk back. So, but I got partway through my degree and realized that it was a lot of work. And I went to my advisor and I was like, I don't know what to do. This is a lot for me. And she said, well, you keep taking these like theater classes and English classes and you ace all of those. Why don't you just get your degree in English? You're 3/4 of the way there anyway. And I went, okay. My dad then pointed out that English is an area of study, not a profession. Probably should have listened to that a little closer, but teaching was great. I loved working with kids. I did not take my writing seriously. I did not consider myself a writer in any way, shape, or form until I was a few years into my teaching career and realized that I could no longer afford my monthly bills and I needed extra money. And then suddenly I looked at my writing and went, I bet I could write for people and earn some extra money that way. And that was how I started freelance writing, editing, eventually became a ghostwriter, and then ended up where I am now.
Yeah, I was going to say that most people wouldn't turn to writing as a way to get extra income generally, but to do it as a service. The one thing that pops into my mind is you must have had the confidence in your abilities to do that.
You know, I've been criticized for a lot of things in my life. Lack of confidence has never been on the list. Okay. I am that kid who jumped off the cliff and went, I'll let you know if there's rocks in the pool at the bottom. So it's always a grand adventure for better or worse. But in this case, the other big difference for me is that I do not believe that we are, well, you're both teachers, you're both educators. I believe in a growth mindset, not a fixed mindset. We are not born with gifts. We develop our skills through practice. That's why my business is named All Right Well, because I genuinely believe, and I would argue I've proven through some of my work, that we can all write well with the right support and education and training and practice, just like every other profession.
Having had that success then and that courage to go and do all those great things, looking back at that first book you mentioned being, as we all look at our first book perhaps, or first drafts especially, as a bit of like a trash project almost, what advice would you give yourself from now going back to your younger self?
None. I did it the way I did it, and it got me to where I am. And every first book is bad. You just said yourself, we all look at our first novels and go, that was kind of a trash novel. That was kind of a trash story. And this is, I always equate it to toddlers. If you have ever watched an infant take their first steps, the failure rate is 100%. They fall down every single time. That's the only way a child's first steps end, is with them failing and falling down. And not a single one of us ever correct them, tell them to do better, or blame them for their failure. Every single one of us starts jumping up and down and cheering and like hooting and hollering and giving them big hugs and celebrating. And that is how I view first books for every single author, because it's the only way to get through that first.
So as someone who's then developed their love of science through teaching and those sorts of things as well, and obviously your passions and your hobbies, why did you go into the world of romance for your novels?
Because at heart, I want the world to have a happy ending. And it's really funny. We talk a lot in the writing community, big picture, we talk a lot about that correlation between reading and writing. My favorite quote, I heard it from Pam Allen. I don't know if it originated with her, but I was at a conference where she was speaking and she made the comment, writing is breathing out, reading is breathing in. And I was like, that's it, that right there. And for most people, I think a lot of times we like to write the same thing we like to read and vice versa. And I do enjoy reading romance, but I have to say, thrillers, suspense, and hard sci-fi, like Andy Weir, are my first and favorite choices for books. But I can't write them because I don't want to, partially because I feel like picking apart the plot to figuring out how to build that kind of story, I feel like it would strip away a little bit of the magic for me. And I don't want to give that up, because I know it has for romance. Like there's a reason I never read historical romance. It's because that's what I started out writing as a ghostwriter, and it completely ruined the genre for me. So I don't want to do that with my favorite stories.
That's really interesting. Sorry, Chris, just one question based on that, talking about ruining the genre for you. And I was going to ask about being a ghostwriter, sort of what's it taught you as a writer? And, obviously that's an effect it has, is put you off something. So what's perhaps interesting about being a ghostwriter, and what's it taught you as a writer?
It is the most powerful, most miserable experience in my entire life. It was absolutely, completely life-changing. For almost 2 years, I produced an 80,000 word historical romance novel every single month while teaching full-time.
Wow.
If you struggle with producing words, if anytime a writer comes to me and they're like, I'm not real good at hitting like deadlines and I never just quite manage to, I'm like, stop trying to publish for yourself. Go be a ghostwriter for somebody. It'll only take a couple months and you'll be like, oh yeah, I can sit down and write 5,000 words tonight before bed. Because when you're getting paid, and that's the really like magical part, is when there is a financial need, which again is why I started writing. And you are getting paid, because with my ghostwriting positions, and definitely with the freelance writing where I started, I literally got paid per word. Talk about an incentive to get you to put the words on the page. And I learned, it meant that I actually learned filter words in reverse, because I learned to put filter words into my copy to increase my pay and decrease my writing time. And then I learned to take filter words out of my writing to make it good writing. But it means that, when you write that quantity consistently for that long, it really does completely change your perspective. There is it's almost like it fractured part of my brain where I can now completely separate the passion for the art of writing craft from the business of producing words to sell, which makes it a lot easier for me to find the balance between the two, even when that balance shifts beneath our feet, especially right now with AI and everything else going on. Like, that balance is constantly shifting. So for me to be able to manage those two, I feel like has been a really nice blessing from my time as a ghostwriter. That said, by the time I left, oh my gosh, never again, never, ever. So it is something everyone should have done, but no one should plan to do it for long. I love the cat in your background. That's awesome.
Yeah, I think my question on the whole ghostwriter thing is because, like, the way I see a ghostwriter, you know, somebody's name is going on the front. So it's almost like a musician coming to somebody and say, write me a song, record the actual sound, sing it as well, but then I'm just going to slap my name on the front of it. Did it not jar with you in that experience?
Yes and no. I absolutely understand that feeling. And there were moments where that would crop up. I was really fortunate. Any ghostwriter is going to go through numerous clients. And I did. I probably 6, maybe, I don't know. It was like 10 years ago. It's been a while. But I had one in particular who was selling my work, and like, she became a 6-figure author using my writing. And It was because she had the business and marketing skills. She knew what she was doing to make this a business. So she was able to take my writing and produce it and share it, distribute it, and then sell it in a way that worked really well for her and allowed her to continue paying me. And so it really, I was incredibly fortunate because all of the clients that I worked with were open about what they were doing. And the majority of them had no idea how the publishing industry worked. A lot of them had been sold some expensive magical course about how they could become rich as an author without even writing a book. So there was definitely all of that in there. But there was also, in the sea of that, there were also pockets, and I firmly believe there still are, pockets of individuals who have some of those business and marketing skills and publishing skills, but want somebody else to do the writing for them. And so that partnership was incredibly rewarding, I like to think, for both of us. And then when I kind of stepped up and I said, you know what? I want to put my own name on this. I'm tired of doing this and seeing it go out under your name. I'm tired of seeing this all be attributed to your success. She was kind enough. She walked me through everything. She shared all of her processes with me. I put that together. That it heavily influenced everything I've developed since then. So all of your concerns are valid and will be issues that ghostwriters have, but there is also some big advantage in there as well. And the other thing I'll say is that burning want to get the credit for myself is what, the first time you hit publish on KDP or wherever, and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm about, and you hit the button and it goes live. And the next day you wake up, and in my case, my mother-in-law had bought the book. She'd been stalking me on Amazon. And I was immediately like, what did I do? That was so dumb. Shouldn't have shared those thoughts with the world. That was my book. Should not have shared that with them. And then I was able to kind of think back to that ghostwriting and remember that agony of having somebody else's name on the book. And that was what allowed me to kind of take that deep breath and go, it is what it is, but it's got my name on it.
It's really interesting the way that all worked. But one question I've got, based on someone who might be stepping into their kind of self-published author journey, do you think it's wise for them to just keep honing their craft and writing their drafts? Or do you think there's actually a reason they should step aside or put aside some time to really focus on the marketing and development side of that as well?
I am a massive advocate for holistic education in all subjects at all levels. Holistic education outperforms isolated instruction every single time. And so what I mean by that is if your goal is to be a professional author who owns your own pen name, whether it's under your legal name or not, who turns that into a brand that readers love, who grows massive following, and who gets to keep full rights and control over your work. If that is your goal, you cannot only learn writing, because your goal isn't to be a writer at that point. Your goal is to be a successful authorpreneur, including all the business and marketing pieces. If you grow those out of balance, and I don't know if you have kept up with any of the book talk drama around Milo Winter, but I use that as a prime example. Anytime our learning gets out of balance, anytime we are dedicating too much to our writing craft and not enough to the business and the marketing and the selling and all of that, we see revenue drop. And then it doesn't matter how much the quality of the book increases because nobody's reading it. Mm-hmm. And then Milo Winter is the very rare example of when the opposite happens. When our marketing skills, when our sales exceed our writing abilities, we have a very different problem to resolve. So I really advocate for authors to grow in balance. You need to develop through iteration, meaning the entire book production process.
Yeah. Could you talk to us about that story a little bit without going into too much detail? Because I'm not aware of that. And it sounds like, from what you described, that he's massively over-marketed something that maybe not is quite as high quality as expected.
So the really short version is we started with an incredibly passionate teenage writer who was marketing savvy enough, intentionally or not, to share their passion and then their entire step-by-step process of writing and developing the book on TikTok. And so every time that writing was happening, every time another piece was complete, and every time another revision was done, there was marketing involved as well. And so this author, originally the author went by Audra Winters, I believe. And if I am wrong, please somebody correct me in the chat. But originally she collected 6 figures worth of pre-orders. 6 figures worth of pre-orders.
Wow.
For a debut novel.
That's incredible.
We all dream about that.
Yeah.
Like, holy guacamole, she did the thing that all of us want to do. And then she sent out the books. And at their lowest, Goodreads got down to like a 1.8 star rating, I think.
Wow.
Because it was, and here's the other thing. If you've ever worked with teenagers and anyone developing their writing skills, there is a very predictable growth pattern that we see in those writing craft skills. There are predictable levels that writers grow through. And she was exactly where she was supposed to be as an 18-year-old aspiring author, which wasn't really very good. Show me any 18-year-old that is very good at anything. All of us enter our professions pretty bad at whatever it is that we're doing. And sure enough, that's where she was. And so she sent out all the books. She got horrible reviews. She got raked over the coals. Everybody wanted refunds. She obviously couldn't afford to give them refunds because she'd been using those pre-orders to live. Through a whole turn of events that I didn't keep too close tabs with, they're going by Milo Winters now and prefer he, him pronouns. So he agreed to release a second edition with a new round of editing. That was just this week canceled, which is why it came up this week. And now there's talk about them like fleeing the internet and possibly the country and, all that drama. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is we have a very passionate teenage author who did the thing that all of us strive to do. Unfortunately, she didn't have the writing chops. He didn't have the writing chops to back it up, the writing experience to back it up, and the writing education to back it up. And I never want to see that happen to an author, but I would argue we see the same thing just in reverse all the time.
Do you think readers
in your opinion, then what? Sorry, Chris, I was going to say, in your opinion, then, what's the difference between a great novel that's written really well and then a great marketable novel?
So that's really tough because it depends on your lane. If you are writing literary fiction, then you have a very different audience than if you are writing genre fiction. I work with genre fiction. I love literary fiction. I have a literary fiction novel that I hope to publish like upon my death, but not before then. Genre fiction is generally what we're talking about when we're talking about commercially viable, profitable business, profession, long-term kind of thing. So when we're talking about genre fiction, MVP, that minimum viable product, it has to be a strong story that readers will love, and it has to be written well enough that they are able to sink into the story. And that is all. And the number one thing that rips readers out of the story is not filter words or adverbs, it is typos. So if you get rid of all your typos, it is okay if you have a lot of filter words. When I look back at my first published novel, which, mind you, I'd been writing professionally for 10 years by that point. When I published Alongside Lucy, which was my debut, I look back at it now and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is like 70% passive voice. Did I like forget how active voice worked while drafting this novel? And it still sells okay. Even now, it still sells okay. It's not my bestseller, but it was profitable. I earned more off of it than I spent producing it.
Do you think every author goes through that sort of mindset and looks back at their work and criticizes it? Because I imagine they do, but also, do you think readers really notice it that much different as well?
Yes and no. As for every author going through it, I hope so, because I think that critical analysis of our own growth is vital to our continued development. And that collectively becomes literature's continued development and the whole industry's push forward. So I think we need to. So if you aren't, I would recommend that you should. But more than that, you had a second part of your question there. Can I ask you to remind me what that was?
Oh, so from the reader's perspective, do you think so if someone's followed an author, do you think do they mind so much that if they've enjoyed book one, how much it's improved, or can that even be a factor that puts some readers off, the fact it's changed so much in the terms of writing?
The only way it's going to put readers off is if we change genres, because we're really changing audiences there. And so that's going to put readers off, not because the reader has changed, but because we have. And so we need to recognize anytime we change that we need to change the reader that we're looking at as well. Beyond that, I actually have found that, number one, a lot of readers admire it, because the reality is we talk about growing in balance. And when you grow in balance, by the time you have thousands of followers and your book is selling very, very well and thousands of readers are picking it up, by that point, if you've been iterating and practicing along the way, you are a strong enough writer that they will go back. If one of those readers loves it and they're like, oh my gosh, this is my new favorite author, and then they go back and they pick up your debut, it is highly likely most of the time they look at the debut and they're like, wow, this author has really grown a lot. And they tend to respect us for it. They might reach out and ask us to rewrite a new edition of that first book, but I'm always impressed by how human beings can be if we don't put perspectives on them and allow them to just share their thoughts and feelings.
Yeah. Chris Hooley has disappeared from somewhere. That's the other part of the question I was going to ask is, as an author then, if you are at the stage where you are noticing how much different your work is from, kind of your first book to where you are now, do you feel like as an author, they should be looking to go back and fix that work, or they've moved on, they've grown, that's what it is, leave it there?
I think it absolutely depends on the author. There is no one right way to be a writer. My biggest advice tends to come down to the stage of their author career, along with their publishing schedule and their personality. For some authors, asking them to go back and revisit something they wrote in the past will immediately bring up writer's block, self-doubt, and self-criticism that they cannot get past. And I never want somebody to experience that. So if that's the case, it is what it is. Use it to celebrate how far you've come. And for the love of all things holy, do not harm yourself in that way. That said, other authors want to go back immediately. And I always stop them and I'm like, hold up a second, because you're going to continue to grow. 10 years from now, you're going to go back and be like, oh, I should have done that even better. So that's where I firmly believe that authors should grow through new authors. I always encourage them to use their publishing schedule as their primary marketing engine, because they need to be able to focus enough time and energy on learning publishing and developing their book production process. So, do they prefer to write chapter by chapter? Are they a plotter or a pantser? Do they track their word count, or do they sit down for a certain amount of time on certain days? Like, how do you get the writing done? And then what kind of editing do you need? Are you someone who needs 3 layers of editing that takes 6 months? Or are you someone who's going to send it to beta readers and then use software to support some line edits and then have a bunch of human proofreaders? And so the book production process goes much faster for you. Who's going to be your cover designer? What's that going to look like? Who are your comp authors? All of that requires time and energy that is easiest to focus on if we allow Amazon to handle the marketing for us. And I always caution people, this will not get any author to 6 figures. You cannot become a 6-figure author using nothing but your publishing schedule as your primary marketing engine. You can, however, get to a point that you see consistent pre-orders and sales and positive profitability coming in. And then by that point, you've got your book production process. It's predictable. You know who your editor is. You know who your cover designer is. You know who your comp authors are. So then you can go, okay, let's start looking at some more marketing. Let's try a bigger launch. Let's see what my newsletter subscribers, let's grow some newsletter subscribers and get them involved and see if pre-orders can take off if we do some direct pre-orders. So it really depends. If they are using their publishing schedule as their primary marketing engine and they need a new publication somewhere, sometimes rewriting an old book is a good way to fill that spot and get that new release boost without having to create a story from nothing. I often see this when authors are really grappling with personal challenges and they're like, my creative well isn't deep enough to produce a novel at the moment. But if you're working on developing some big launches and things like that, don't go rehash an old book. Focus on what you're doing now and use it to fill gaps.
I was going to ask a question based on obviously how Chris introduced you at the start in terms of the 4 books a year. Like, to a lot of people, that would be massively overwhelming. But how do you do it then? What's the sort of secret there?
So very simply, and can I use you as my example? Will you be my guinea pig? Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
How many words an hour do you write? Like when you sit down to write and if you know the scene, you're ready to go, you've got it. Roughly how many words can you produce in about an hour?
Probably anywhere between 500 and 1,000, I'd say.
And that is a very normal answer. In fact, we see statistically most writers, most people who self-identify as writers are hitting an average of about 800 words an hour. And anytime somebody focuses on it, that will immediately jump to over 1,000 words an hour. And then we see, it's really funny, there is exactly one group of people who will hit more than 1,400 words an hour. And the one thing that they all have in common is that they all have ghostwriting experience. Because it is both the most miserable and beneficial thing you can do as a writer. But when we think about it that way, so let's use 800 words an hour, okay? At 800 words an hour, you need 10,000 hours? No, 80,000 words in a novel. So 8,000 words an hour, you need 100 hours. Did I do that math right? I'm a word nerd. Okay.
Yeah, you did it right. Yeah.
Okay, so you need 100 hours. Okay, how many hours per week do you write?
Well, at the moment, 0, but let's say I could do an hour a day.
Okay, so 7 hours a day. And you need, what did we say, 800 or 100 hours? So at 7 hours a week, you're looking at, all right, I'm breaking down, I'm pulling out my calculator, and it's an old school one because, yeah. So if we do.
Calculator next year as well. Brilliant.
I do. That's because I'm also a business owner. And again, we've got to put all the pieces together. So at 100 hours and 7 hours a week, you need 14 and a half weeks to draft your book.
Interesting.
You can
when
write
you
4
say
books
it
a
like
year.
that.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, the numbers make it sound really simple. Reality is always more complicated. That said, that's where the 4 books per year method comes in, because it really dives into recognizing that for this to work, and Chris, I would be so honored if you tried this and like came back sometime and reported just happened for you. But one of the most powerful shifts that I see writers make very quickly when we start talking about 4 books per year is simply by structuring our writing sessions. So we don't just sit down to write, but instead we recognize that every human being on earth requires 3 steps to do something. We have to transition into it, then we have to do the thing, and then we have to transition out of it. As adults, we talk about it getting into flow state, and then, coming back and rejoining reality. If you have children, you probably have seen this. If you try and get them to transition activities without a warning, and it all falls apart and we end up with screaming bedlam. So we're the same way as writers. So I know for me, transitions really slow me down. So I am very, very careful to allot a 15-minute transition into my writing. So the first 15 minutes of my writing session is laying on my office floor. I've got a tree in my office. It's a little mini tree in a pot, but I lay underneath it and I look up through the leaves. I don't know why that works for me. That puts me into my writer space, and it allows me to let go of paying bills and who needs a ride where and what groceries I need to pick up this week, and really just focus on the story. And I have learned that it takes me a solid 12 to 15 minutes before I am fully ready to sit down and really crank out the words. But then after that 15 minutes, I'll go write for 45 minutes and I'll produce 1,000 words every single time. And then I do the 3rd step, and to transition out, I write 1 sentence, sometimes a list of bullet points, a couple bullet points with what I plan to write next. So that the next time I come to sit down for my writing session, I review those, and those become little seeds that get planted in my brain as I go lay down under my tree for my think time. That flow is life-changing. And once you've kind of established that, then you can start bringing in think time in other areas of your life. So when I'm out walking my dogs, that is my think time for my books. And so I'm starting to put together ideas so that then by the time I'm laying under the tree and preparing for my writing session, I'm really organizing those thoughts. I'm putting them into written words. I'm rehearsing conversations between characters, which means when I am actually at my keyboard, I am significantly more productive.
They are great tips, really are. Anya says these are some great tips. I'm going to try these tomorrow morning as I have my coffee. I think they are really good. And Chris says, another Chris, love the Chris's on this show. Fascinating stuff. Never seen a calculator on the chat show before. I think that's really good. And do you know what? It's something I think I will try to adapt on the basis that when I'm writing, for example, I get stuck into it and I'm going, and then just switching off without that kind of end sort of breakdown process that you kind of mentioned, I think is quite off-putting. You just kind of leave it there and it's kind of maybe at the end of a scene or whatever, but having those bullet points of where to go next, I think is a really vital stage that just allows you to kind of consolidate what you've done and then where to go next. So I think that's a really valid point. And one thing, sorry, just one question, Chris, sorry about this. Anya says, I tap out after about 1,000 words, my inspiration evaporates.
Oh, this is such a good question.
Yeah. Do you have any insight on why that might be?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are 3 factors that limit our writing. And so I call them limiting factors because I started out as a biology major. But essentially there are 3 things that will slow down our writing, and only 3 things that will slow down our writing. And none of them are writer's block. One is our mechanical ability. How fast can my fingers move? This becomes a problem as we get older. I am just starting to develop carpal tunnel and realizing that this will be a limiting factor at some point in my life. At that point, we want to look at dictation, other options there. The second limiting factor is our ability to think up the next part of the story. It's that creativity and that imagination. And here's the really cool thing, going back to that growth mindset. creativity is a skill that we can develop and practice. So I spent a lot of time when I was writing as a freelance writer, I was teaching full-time during the day. Then I would go home, help my son with his homework, make dinner, and then tell my husband, I'll be out as soon as I'm done writing. And I had to write 5,000 words before I was allowed to come out and enjoy my evening glass of wine and a show with my husband before bed. So I would go, and at the time we were living in a little apartment, but we had a walk-in closet that was big enough for me to put a dining room chair and one of those little TV tray kind of things, folding tray things. So I would sit there until I'd written 5,000 words. I can write 5,000 words in under 3 hours. because when there's a glass of wine and an hour TV show with my husband and then my bed sitting on the other side of that 5,000 words, I get real motivated real fast. So to be able to make that happen, I realized I was like, I got to be able to think up stuff faster. I don't have time, especially at the end of a day when I'm tired. And so I started playing games where every time, and my son was great for this because he was little at the time, we would play games, tell the story. So as we're walking, we would see somebody and I'd be like, tell me the story. What's that person doing? Or he would spot something and he'd be like, hey, Mom, tell me the story. What's happening there? And you just create it on the fly. You just make it up as you go along. And it's amazing how when you practice that, how much more quickly you can start to pull out things and be like, oh, we could go here from this, or we could do this. And then once you've got multiple ideas, you can start kind of selecting which one's the best one. So there's huge power in developing that. And then the third limiting factor is the ability to translate thoughts into words. And this one is really hard because we don't actually understand enough about how our brains work to really have a full scientific understanding of this. What we do know is that, like everything else, it's a skill, so you can practice. And that is where the way to practice this is to go out and find something and then write about it and hand it to somebody and see if they can tell what you are writing about if you did not use the name of the thing or the scene or the moment at all in the writing. And the first activity I always ask people to do, and again, I live in rural Appalachia, middle of nowhere. What color is a tree trunk?
Brown.
I'm going to ask some writers to go out into the world over the next couple of days and go look at a tree trunk.
Is it gray?
It's very gray, very, very gray, not at all brown. And so that's where if you can go out and you can take something like that and describe it in a way that immediately conjures up that for the reader, one of the really cool things that you learn is that while science cares that tree trunks are gray and not brown, literature doesn't. Using that brown code as a shortcut, even though it isn't scientifically accurate, is the fastest and most effective way to communicate with our reader. That's also the same way cliches work. So again, practicing putting in things into words allows us to pull from a much deeper well of options to make that translation happen faster. So anytime somebody tells me they get stuck, I always ask them, and our commenter just made it very clear, I run out of inspiration. Practice storytelling. Play that game where you go tell the story. What's happening to that person? If you are somebody who's sitting here listening to this and you're like, I have all the ideas, but they live in like images and scenes and 3D in my head, and I don't know how to put them into two-dimensional words on the page. Number one, take a writing class, because that's what writing classes teach. And then number two, practice the skill by writing about things around you.
Amazing. Yeah.
Maria, you are definitely one of the most sort of interesting guests that we've had in terms of the preciseness of your writing advice and how good it is, and how obviously I think that's that science background that you quantified science into this sort of neat package that everyone can sort of understand. But obviously I'm aware that we've gone 48 minutes, nearly 49, and we've not talked at all about your book. So we do a section on this show where we normally play a little video called What's the Story, and we come back and you give us an elevator pitch. I think you'd be brilliant at that, and I think Chris should still play the video because that part should happen. And then we can get to hear all about your writing and your book rather than you sharing your brilliant and amazing advice with everybody.
I will indeed, yes. And just to suggest that you have the option here of talking about Linked Hearts, which is obviously came out last year. or you can talk about your writer books, which makes a bit more sense in this kind of conversation. But either way, we will chat about some of your books and right after this. And if you're watching this right now, please consider some questions that you can send in to our guest, and then we will ask those straight after this. So here's What's the Story, and here's the video. So Maria, that is a sign that we're normally having a good conversation when we miss those. So would you like to talk about Linked Hearts or your fiction stories? Let's get into those, shall we?
Sure. So
Yes.
with my fiction novels, Linked Hearts, the entire Taylor Industries series was inspired ultimately by my shock when I moved to Appalachia and realized that there's actually a thriving technology community out here. And it's weird. It's ultimately because of grant funding, but that sparked the seed that made me wonder, out here, life is so different where I live compared to in the city and what I experienced for most of my life before moving here, that I kind of wanted to showcase that through this. So I really started with, what if a massive world-changing tech company existed 3 hours west of Washington, D.C., because that's all the farther away I am. I go see plays at the Ford Theater. Like, I can go into Washington, D.C. for a day trip. So, but have them living here, where air gaps are normal for technology security, because, well, we didn't have internet until 2020. So I started with that. And then I said, okay, who would come after them and why? And I ended up with a whole labyrinth of political espionage, some corporate espionage. In book 2, we have a Chinese submarine stuck on the ocean floor, and our team at Taylor Industries has to decide whether or not they want to go out and rescue them. They are all open door, spicy, romantic suspense. But one of the greatest compliments I ever got was when my dad said, you know, I actually read your book. And I was like, you didn't have to do that, Dad. He was like, no, but for real, the story was really good. So I really pride myself on writing thrillers and suspense that also include that strong storyline with the romantic hero. And my heroines tend to get a little violent. That might be a little bit of me bleeding onto the page. I definitely have one main character who she really views her shotgun as her right hand. But in Linked Hearts, we open with an alpaca farmer whose lead alpaca, whose name is Butthole, because the guy that when Zachary named him, Zachary was like, he's just Butthole. That's just it. So Butthole wanders off to a neighboring property and kind of accidentally stumbles onto a stalker breaking into his neighbor's house. And then so he goes back to warn her, and the two of them fall in love, except that she has this stalker, and the stalker isn't really after her. They're after her family's business and all of their access. So every book includes a happily ever after for the couple, but the suspense thriller storyline overarches all 6 books.
So it does sound fascinating, as Halo said, so thank you for the comments. Romantic suspense is obviously a difficult genre to balance anyway. So how do you balance how do you keep the characters and the romance engaging to the reader while not being overshadowed by the danger and the espionage going on in the background?
I feel like that's a better question for my readers than for me, because I don't know if I do that. I mean, I like to think that I do. We all do. I certainly know that I try. It is definitely something that I question and that I work on consistently with my novels. I will also say, when I tried writing thriller suspense, everyone told me they were cold and there wasn't any warmth to them. When I tried writing romance, everybody said my characters were very vapid and they were just like, nobody cared. It wasn't until I put the two together that readers I really got feedback where people are like, oh my gosh, this is a complete novel. And call it a little woo-woo, if you will. But I like to think that it's because it means that I'm able to incorporate both sides of myself into my story. And so I think anytime an author anytime an author is getting feedback that their story doesn't feel like it has the depth it's supposed to, one of the questions I always ask the writer is, what are you leaving out of this book? What is it that you want to write, but that you aren't including here? And a lot of times when we learn how to weave some of that in, it's amazing what happens. When I write the suspense plot line, I am a diehard plotter. When I write the romance, I am a diehard discovery writer. And so it's bringing the two together and then weaving them together. It is the art of my process that I cannot qualify.
So is it always a plan to have it as a series?
Yes. In fact, I built the entire series very, very, very intentionally to market. I targeted Catherine Cowles as my comp author. I researched her books because I love her novels. So I read all of them. I made note, how many spicy scenes does she have? What chapter does the meet cute happen? Like, I broke down all of those genre expectations. And then I walked around and this is where I really like separating my think time from my writing time, because during my think time, I don't care about any of that garbage. I'm just thinking of stories. I'm just thinking about what do I want to have? What do I want to write about? What do I want to feel? What do I want to put into this story? And then once I kind of had things going, anytime I got stuck and I wasn't sure where to go next, and or anytime I felt like maybe I was going a little off track, if I started to feel bored as the writer, anything like that, I went back and compared my metrics to Catherine Cowles, and every single time I was like, oh, it's because she had a whole new big bad event happen in here. She escalated the tension in this chapter, and I didn't. Bad me. And then I go back and I escalate the tension. I'm like, oh, look, it works. So my stories, the content of my writing is very different from hers, but the structure of the story and the way I assemble the pieces is very similar, which means readers who feel very comfortable in her books get some of that same rhythm and some of that same comfort in mine, while exploring. I like to think I have a very different voice from her, because I'm a lot more technical and analytical, and a very, very different story content. But a lot of the same levels of like swearing and spice and things like that.
Yeah. It's a great way to do it. I think it's fantastic to break it down. Halo says that's what I love about my form and analysis class in college, quantifying creativity for the win. Yeah, it's a great way to break it down. And for someone that, really loves an author and is trying to write, then I think that's a great way to look into how it works and why people like it, but also the important thing that you mentioned, your voice is very unique to yourself as well. So, yeah. And last book in the series is due out next year.
Oh no, last book in the series is already out. I published all 6 books in under 12 months because I don't like to make my readers wait. So readers can now purchase the complete set. Linked Hearts is now out in audio as well. That one just came out in October. And then my new series, the first book in my new series is called Tangled Bones. It is available for pre-order now. It starts with a guy in a pickup truck careening into a clinic parking lot, falling out of the driver's seat, and then promptly dying in the parking lot of a chainsaw wound. That will be available right around Labor Day, so end of August, beginning of September, and it will be coming out in audio, ebook, and paperback all at the same time.
Amazing.
Maria, I feel like a lot of our listeners are going to want more of you. So if that's the case, how do they get sort of access to your brain through all the services, obviously, that you do?
Yeah. So I have a community, the All Right Well community. It's on the school platform. This way we don't get sucked into browsing Facebook. There is no scrolling. So it's an isolated community. It's also a paid community. It is $3 a month to join, or $30 for the year. Not because I want your $3, but because I don't want scammers and all of that garbage. So you won't find any of that. It is a very small community of writers who are there for a reason. We have very high participation, and we promise, because I do have 2 other authors in there with me who help me run it, we verify all answers shared in the group to make sure that there are no myths, no misinformation being passed around. And the three of us vet everything. So it's a really high quality group. And then once you're in there, I've got some exclusive videos. I've got some courses available. If you just want to schedule a one-on-one session with me because you want to talk through stuff with me for half an hour, that is available in the community as well. So it's really, I tried to set it up so that every author can get whatever they need out of it once you're in that community.
Brilliant. I got a question in from Anya, and I want to ask this because our time is flying through here. Are the Appalachians haunted? I missed the first few minutes of the show. I apologize if it's been addressed. It has not been. It's a good question. Do we have an answer?
In the Maria Secoy writer world, no, they are not. In my pen names world, yes, they are. And that's where I write paranormal romance, but I don't share that pen name because I don't like to keep them connected. In reality, I'm of the belief that everywhere is haunted to some extent. The Appalachians are the oldest mountains in the world. I would be real hard pressed to argue that there's no unsettled spirits there.
Yeah, lovely. Fantastic. Well, we have got more questions to ask, but we are out of time. So I'm sure we can sort another interview out with the amount of content we can get from this and from yourself, Maria. So what I'd like to say is thank you so much. But before we do wrap it up, where can people go and find you on social media? Obviously got a YouTube channel as well. Where can they just find all of your information and consume you?
Very simple. If you go to allwritewell.com, and for the spelling, remember, we can all, A-L-L, write, W-R-I-T-E, well, W-E-L-L, with the right support.com. It has the links for everywhere you want to go from there.
Absolutely fantastic. Yeah. Anything else from you, Chris?
No, just thank you. You are a fountain of knowledge, and I will definitely be returning to that fountain.
Thank you. That's like the greatest honor. I'm so glad to be on here today. Thank you, gentlemen.
Yeah, we'll all drink from the knowledge, the fountain of knowledge. But yes, thank you so much, Maria. It's been absolutely fantastic. Like Chris said, so much information, which is what we were talking about before the show started with you as well, that, we're trying to get all of that good information out and spread it around the community. And you've done a great job for that with us tonight. So thank you so much for sharing your story with us.
Thank you. It was a pleasure being here.
You're very welcome. Everyone else that's watching, thank you so much for doing it live. Please hit that like, hit the subscribe if you haven't done so. And if you've taken advice from tonight, please, go and recommend it to someone else. And also have a great weekend, more importantly, and a productive one. But for the rest of you listening back on the podcast as well, thank you for doing that. And we'll see you all again next week. But in the meantime, goodbye. Have a great weekend. See you guys.